Hello, Steve White, Steve White's 89. Well, I finally got into Apt Pupil. Now, Apt Pupil is one Stephen King film I have avoided watching since it was released in 1997, 1998. I just didn't want to deal with the subject. The idea that maybe they were celebrating Yahtzees, and that's what I'm going to call them, thanks to the algorithm on YouTube. Now, the film is about a student, a high school student. It's set in 1984, which I didn't really realise. They don't really play with the era or anything. And he discovers this former Yahtzee who's living under a pseudonym in his neighbourhood. And he basically confronts him and lets him know that he has this information over him now, and he uses that to exploit him, to get him to tell him all about his crimes and what he did during the war. And I was never sure what the intentions of the boy was. I was like, is he trying to make this man relive what he did to make him feel guilty? Is he trying to get information so that he can take him to the police? Or is he actually reveling in this because he's actually interested in it and getting off on it, or something? I just didn't really want to do it. It was unclear in the trailer how it went. And also, I don't think I really want to see Ian McKellen as a Yahtzee, because I like Ian McKellen. I just didn't want to see him portraying that character. Didn't even realise David Schwimmer was in the film playing a guidance counsellor, and Joshua Jackson's also in the film as the kid's friend. So it was interesting. I didn't know they were in the film. The kid who played the main guy was Brad Renfro. I haven't heard of him before or seen him before. Todd was his name. I had to look for the name of the character. Todd Bowden. He was the film didn't do that well. It cost, I think, 12 million to make, 14 million to make, and made 8.9 million. The subject matter is just a bit too dark, and they didn't exploit it. The novella, which Stephen King wrote in 1982, had a lot more violence and so forth. They cut most of that out, and also some sexual violence was sort of removed as well. And it still was too dark. It didn't really exploit things, but it still, a lot of people felt that it was the wrong subject for what was sort of being sold as a Stephen King horror film, whereas much more of a psychological thriller. But even then, people thought it was still inappropriate for the content, I think. And it is just disturbing to watch. It's not like a horror movie where you can get scared and have a thrill out of it, or it's just disturbing to watch this teenager who obviously is just his white privilege is awakening, and he is sort of realizing that he's gaining power in the world as he learns and is sort of bestowed this white privilege upon him, and he's starting to revel in it and realizing that he can do whatever he wants and getting off on the power of that. And he starts to bully this man who he knows he has this information over, because obviously he doesn't want to be exposed, because then he'll be tried and everything for war crimes. And I wasn't sure if he was evil or confused until the pigeon. That was when there was no redemption for this character as far as I'm concerned. I was like, yeah, no, this kid is evil, and he's feeding off evil, and this is all exploitative. There's no redemption for either of these characters, and there really isn't. The Yahtzee character, eventually he tries to kill a homeless man who saw him in the uniform, because the boy gets a uniform from a costume store and makes him put it on and march and stuff like that. And he tries it on later because it awakens his, I don't know, malice, I guess, his cruelty, that he starts to re-engage in some of these memories of what he did during the war, when at first he acts like he was ashamed of it, or it was a bad thing, he was hiding from it. Then he starts to embrace it, and that's disturbing to watch. And this hobo sees him in the uniform, So then when they meet up later, he invites him in. There's a weird homoerotic scene where the homeless man seems to be offering him things in exchange for staying there in a shower and so forth, and money. He tries to kill him. He has a heart attack. He calls the boy. The boy comes over and has to actually finish off the homeless man for him. Then he ends up going to the hospital, but he is exposed by someone literally in the next bed who recognises who he is, and the authorities come in and he is revealed. He gives himself an air embolism, so he commits suicide. They find the body as well, of course, but there's no hint that Todd had anything to do with that, so he's sort of gotten away with this. Except during all of this, there was a moment where the Yahtzee, what was his name? I've forgotten his name. Kurt DeSander. He flips the tables on the boy. He basically, because he's ignoring his studies and he's gone from a student while he's been going around every day having this Yahtzee tell him all the stories of the war, and he goes to the school and pretends to be his grandfather, talks to the guidance counsellor, and basically ends up blackmailing him into stopping, well, basically just switches the power, the tables, and he has to then work really hard to get his grades back up and everything. And then when he's graduating, the guidance counsellor realises that that wasn't his grandfather, and when it comes out what he is, he starts to realise there's something wrong with this kid in that relationship. So he goes to speak to the parents out there. He's confronted by the kid, who becomes very menacing, and he threatens to cry that the teacher did something to him, the guidance counsellor did something to him, and destroy his career if he exposes him. So he reveals himself to be evil. He has totally embraced the use of power and cruelty in his life, and he's obviously going to go on to be a very successful white male, because it's very disturbing on many levels, and there's many levels of commentary and social commentary in this, along with horror, but not so. It's not a traditional horror. It's not a traditional thriller. I liked it for what it was. I saw it as a drama. I didn't really think of it. So if you think of it like a horror or a thriller, it's not really fulfilling. And it got a lot of bad reviews, and that really depends on what you expect from a film. If you go in expecting a certain thing, you don't get it, then you judge the film by what you're expecting. It's a bit unfair. You need to just go in open-minded, embrace it for what it is, enjoy it for what it is, and not put your own expectations on it, because a lot of reviews and a lot of critics are just like, I hate this film because it wasn't what I thought it should be, and they don't actually look at what it actually was and its actual merits. If you look at most films, they pretty much all have something to offer. They all have something positive, and I think a lot of critics were doing that, and also just the subject matter was very touchy, and some people sort of were offended by it on either side. So so I avoided watching this film. It came out in 1998. I don't know when it came out in Australia. I didn't hear about it till it was on video. I know a friend had seen it and she was interested in Yahtzees and all that, and I really didn't want to, so I didn't end up watching it. I bought it on DVD and I've had it for years. So I've avoided watching it for a couple of decades, and I've had it on DVD probably for 10 years. But I finally watched it, and it was disturbing. There were some parts that were disturbing. And it was what I was afraid of, was that it was like an engaging and embracing of the evil, not sort of exposing it for something that horrible is what it is, but this kid is feeding off it, and it's a reawakening it in the Ian McKellen character, and he commits suicide, and the other guy just he learns from this man and becomes more evil, and it's just a horrible story in that sense. One critic said there was no moral to it, there was nothing learned, nothing, there's nothing achieved by it. You just sort of see these horrible people be horrible, and I'm like, yeah, it just sort of happens, and it's very realistic in that way. It doesn't have that big ending where, everything's put right and so forth. It's really kind of disturbing the way it ends. So I think that's why some people didn't like it. But obviously that was what was intended by Bryan Singer, and there was some controversy around the film. There were some boys who were filmed in a shower that were supposed to be victims in a dream sequence, and they claimed that they apparently didn't know they were supposed to be in a shower, and they were forced to take their clothes off, and they felt it was done. This all seems to be homophobia on the part of the parents and people like that, because obviously they read the script, they knew what the scene was, but they acted like they didn't and that they were forced into doing it. So they ended up refilming it with adults, so they can continue on with the film. And there was no charges or anything because it sounds pretty ridiculous. And I'd heard something about Bryan Singer, some drama, but I didn't know what it was. And this is one of the things apparently. And I'm like, okay, that's actually looks like a really blown up thing about him, and it looks like he didn't do anything wrong. So that was interesting as well. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. God, I can't speak. Bye.